Hello! In this video, we will make an auth context and a provider for it, in which we will store the global state for our application, such as user data, token, and loading state. But first, let's tweak our sign-in form and replace the submit button with a submit button component. Now let's move on to creating the context. To do this, we will create a directory context, in it the appropriate file for our app context. To create a context, use the createContext method and pass in a default value. Add the necessary exports. Now we need to create a type for the context. I propose to store an array in the context, the first element of which will be the state, the second element is the setter for the state. And we update the default value of the context according to our type. Now let's move on to the provider. To do this, we will create a new AppContextProvider component. Small fix, let's rename the imported type. Great, let's go back. In order for our context to work, we need to wrap the provider component and pass it the value prop, which is the value of the context. Let's create a state variable for our context, connect the types, and assign an initial value. Now let's add the necessary exports and connect our provider to the application. Thus, all components that are inside the provider can access the context. To access the context, we can call the useContext hook and pass in the context we want to access. But we can create a new hook that will return the value of the context we need to avoid code duplication. Let's create a new global directory where we'll create the useAppContext hook. This hook will simply return the value of calling the useContext method with the desired context. It remains to add exports. Now we can connect our hook on the sign-in page. We are only interested in the setter, because we need to set the value from the response. Let's open our app component and add a console log for the context state here, temporarily. Great, as we can see after login, the token is stored in the context. Now let's add one more thing, saving the token to the local storage. We will need this a little further. And update the initial value of is loading. In response to the sign-in request, only the token is now received. Let's return to this endpoint and add two more fields for the user, ID and email. Super! Now we can tweak our Axios instance by adding an authorization header to it using our token. To do this, we will update the initialization of the instance and pass the headers object, in which we will place the authorization field and get the value of the token from local storage. But this case will work only during initialization, i.e., if at the time of initialization there was no token in the local store, then the header will be valid. To fix this, let's go back to the sign-in form and add a header update. Great, now the final part. Let's create a component for the authorized part of the application. For now we will leave it empty with plain text so that we can see the difference. And now in the app component, we can divide the application into two parts. If there is a user in the context, then we must display the content for authorized users, if not, for unauthorized users. Now, after logging in, we will get into the authorized part of the application. Super! In the next video, we will add initialization for our context if there is a token in the local store. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment and like. See you in the next video.